Hey, what's up, Giants fans? Welcome to another episode of Giants Talk. I'm Cole Kuiper here with Giants insider Alex Pavlovic. The Giants get swept by one of the worst teams in Major League Baseball. As far as 2026 goes, it doesn't get more SF than that. We'll talk about the Royals series, plus a deep dive on trade candidates as we get closer to the deadline and more. Before we get started, Giants Talk is presented by Mancini Sleep World. Get moving towards better sleep at Mancini Sleep World. We guarantee the best price and free next day delivery at Mancini's. Stop by or visit sleepworld.com to see what's currently available. Okay, Alex, we talked a lot about how the Giants now have their chance to maybe rack up a 4-game winning streak, maybe get their first sweep of the year, maybe take advantage of a soft spot in the schedule. Here we are a few days later, and the Giants got swept by the Royals.
I think we need to start listening to other podcasts to see, like, is Royals Talk doing, a similar thing? Like, hey, Giants coming to town. Time to turn the season around a little bit. Is Angels Talk discussing their trip to San Francisco and the excitement over 3 days to play the Giants?
That's a great question. I'm going to dive into Angels Talk a little bit for the Meckler content and this 8-foot-tall dude who threw up the first pitch the other day.
Right. I think your assignment before next podcast is to get on some of these Reddit boards and see what they're saying about the San Francisco Giants. But
they're not saying anything nice. I'll put it that way.
It's weird because we're in this world where we were like, well, we thought this would be a team that was like right around 500. Maybe a few things go right and you're competing for a playoff spot if a lot goes right, if Tony jolts them and all this. And then pretty early on, we're like, okay, this is a disappointing season. But it still is weird to me when they play the really bad teams and are worse than them, because I still don't think of them that way. And even on this road trip, I think they had the lead in every game. There's an alternate universe where they go 6-0 on this road trip. And it doesn't take very much.
Exactly. It's not that different of a universe, which is crazy.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, you hold on Saturday in Seattle, you score a little bit more the next 4 games. These 5 losses, they scored like 15 total runs. So it wouldn't have taken a whole lot to just cruise through this road trip. And not that changes anything, but at least it's better than this. A reminder that they can't even get a top 10 pick next year anyway. So there's no real difference. Like, there's no benefit to losing these games.
Yeah.
In terms of like future assets and things like that. So yeah, I think that's where this is just a weird one, because if you look at this team that was like 40 and 60 coming in, and they were just like, all right, well, we're the same as you. So
yeah, the Giants got handled by a team. And not only is it 1-run losses where they've led early to those are the games you have to win to be a halfway decent team, but you have to win against the bad teams. Oddly, it's been the really good teams this year that it seems like they've looked way more confident against.
The Braves, the Dodgers.
Exactly.
They're down there with the Rockies and the Angels and the Royals and the Mets. And
maybe it'll be next year, after a full year of this, that we'll go in with that kind of attitude. Like, this is our brethren now, the Rockies, the Royals. This is our people. Because it certainly doesn't feel like that right now. But I'm sure the outside looking in, that is what the rest of the league thinks of the Giants now.
I'll tell you who feels pretty smart today is whoever put a lot of Rockies on their schedule next year and went, yep, that's where you're at right now. So, and you keep waiting for it to. I like kind of jokingly asked you this question a couple of weeks ago: are they going to have a 5-game winning streak? And we were like,
they have to, right?
You just kind of keep thinking, like, like you can't go a whole year and not sweep anybody.
Yeah,
but here we are. It's almost August.
I think I read it's been done 8 times in the modern era, a season without a sweep, as far as recently as the Nationals a few years ago. That could be the Giants this year, man.
The Royals are going to have one of the worst seasons in Major League Baseball, but they had this 3 games.
Yeah.
So
they'll always have that.
And I listened to, I was watching the games, but I like the last couple, I wanted to go back and just kind of see everything over again, because I'm watching a kid while watching some of them. So there's a lot of Royals mixed into the MLB recaps. And it was funny to hear like their excitement over like, this is like 4 wins in the last 5 and things like that. It's like, yep, they're really excited over there. They're having a good time.
Must be nice. Must be
Yeah.
nice. All right. Well, there were some little things that happened this series beyond the usual, beyond the sloppiness and all that. I want to talk about Willy Adames at second base. I guess there are a few Willy Adames at second base talking points, right?
Yeah. A lot going on there.
Let's start with the push call. What did you make of this? Obviously, with the way the Giants season is, it's not like might it have cost them the game? Sure. It doesn't cost them the season. They don't deserve these wins the way they're playing. But is that just total ump show to you? Is that, I mean, obviously it wasn't a legitimate push. I think the argument could be made that the call was made right in the sense that he was safe, full stop.
I do think he was probably safe. Like it kind of glossed over that because so much happened.
Yeah.
I don't know that there was ever an angle that we saw, and maybe if they had really gotten into the challenge and we would have seen the slow-mo, all that, maybe we would have seen something different. I don't know that there was an angle that changes the guy being on second. It is a bit of an ump show. The one thing I will say is I've noticed this year, I think because of the ABS and also challenges, there seems to be this element of like no discussion, no, like you're not out here to talk about these things. We decided, and I don't totally blame them because so much has been like taken out of their hands. And so now it's like, if you come out to argue something, we said you can't challenge that. There's no discussion on this. So it does seem like that's just my perception watching all these games, that has escalated a little bit, where you used to be able to argue a little bit more.
Yeah.
And I think that's where Tony's run into trouble a couple times. He has no blame today, but I think he's run into trouble a couple times trying to get explanations from these things. And these guys are just like, no, we're not doing that anymore. But to the push, like, clearly didn't push him. So he got even a little. Yeah, got the call wrong. It is. I blame the umps. I more blame Major League Baseball and everybody involved. And, you know, there's rules committees and players are involved in some of this stuff as well. We talk about this a fair amount. Like, there's just more that needs to be on the table for challenging things. And we do see this every once in a while where you're just like, oh, that call can't be challenged. And it's like, well, why?
Says who? Like, you guys made the rules. Surely you can make it so it can be.
And now we're interrupting games, you know, at least 3 times, sometimes like 6, 7 times to look at the scoreboard, which is great to do the ABS stuff. But there's still these weird, like, gray areas where they're like, nope, that specific thing that guy and I always try to give umpires the benefit of the doubt, which is throws coming from right field. He's watching the throw. He's watching the play at second. There's a lot going on there. There's 2 big guys involved here. He sees a guy who's what's Sasquatch, like 320 pounds? I don't know. He sees him get knocked over and makes his call, and like it's bang bang. So I think the problem here is that these things can't be, that they have these rules where it's just like there's certain things, there's like 10% of things that you just can't talk about and can't look at again. And you know, that's the issue here is they can't revisit it. And that it seems like there's never any appetite to change any of that. But I wish we would just be like, you know what, we're looking at like 90% of this stuff anyway. Like, this specific rule should not, it seems really dumb that you can spend 3 minutes twice a week looking at a stolen base and trying to figure out if the guy's fingernail was on second base, but you can't actually you can't spend any time looking at whether he was pushed.
What would even the process for changing that to be? That's not the kind of thing that comes up in the collective bargaining agreement. Like, who is the voice that gets behind changing this kind of thing?
It's a good question. I mean, rules committees and Major League Baseball and, you know, players can maybe push for more of this, but obviously they don't need to as well. Umpires push back, but it just, you know, occasionally we have these things that they're like, nope, can't challenge that.
Yeah.
And it's always like, why? Why can't you challenge that?
Yeah. All right. Let's move on to the other Willy Adames.
I want to say one more thing about that.
Absolutely.
You know, that doesn't let him off the hook for giving up.
No, those runs were still given up. The inning could have been over earlier, but like I said, this team doesn't deserve to get the benefit of the doubt on technicalities when they're as bad as they are this year.
Yeah, and it is, I think one thing we've seen from this team is that something goes wrong and then everything goes wrong. And it's like there's this one thing that goes against him, and maybe, I don't know, maybe he's on second, maybe he's not. But Landon Roop certainly doesn't help after that. And even though he was excellent today, just one mistake. But Stam Henches and Keaton Wynn don't help after that. So they're not doing themselves any favors by giving up 5 runs after that.
No. And Tony got tossed.
3rd time.
That's what he's here to do. That's the version of him we've wanted all along.
I do kind of agree. I saw some people on Twitter saying they want him to really let it loose, really get a good ejection. I think a lot of these ejections are similar to this, where it's like, all right, you're talking too much. We're done here. You're out.
Yeah, I don't like that old school 90s kind of ejection where people are throwing rosin bags and making a scene.
Bring some of that back.
Exactly.
He has now tied Gabe Kapler for career ejections as Giants manager.
Wow. Gabe coming out to talk to the umpires was always so funny.
Yeah, it was.
Hey, what am I allowed to complain about here?
He was very, very good at. I think there were some similarities in that Tony a lot of times comes out to do the same. What are we allowed to challenge? What am I allowed to be angry about?
Yep.
But that's where I go back to. I do this is just my perception watching it and watching other games. It does seem like guys are a little faster to just be like, we're not talking about anything.
Yeah. All right, let's rewind all the way back to Monday. More Adames talk, which, by the way, Willie Adames heard me on this podcast, I'm sure, call him out for not being clutch, and he ties the game up on Monday. So I will 1,000% apologize to him for him getting that offensive pop in when they needed it. That being said, would you say he also cost them the game there as well with a mental snafu on defense?
I think I'll make it similar to today's, where I wouldn't say that one play cost them the game, and certainly the guy got him in that position in the first place, with the home run with 2 outs in the 9th. But those are just adding up. And I'll go back to our awards is the wrong word here because this wasn't an award, but when we did our first half recap and kind of categorized everything, and one thing I said was, I don't think there's any specific moment or many specific moments where I'd look at the coaching staff and go, that's really bad. But I think in general, this team plays a sloppy brand of baseball. And that's what that's why Bob Melvin got fired, because it was Buster said in the second half last year, I know I traded all your relievers. I know other guys are hurt. I want to see a better brand of Giants baseball. And we haven't seen that this year. So, and that goes on the players as well. But whether this is coaching or whether this is, accountability or whatever you want to call it, just too many moments like that. And that one, I don't think that one necessarily fully cost them the game, because also Bryce makes an error and there's a lot that went on there, but it wasn't great.
Yeah, that ending on a walk-off bunt like that, 2 bunts in the inning, but that is just such an extra painful way to go. Also, kind of feels like that ball was going to go foul. I know you can't make that judgment call.
Yeah, that's tough to let that one.
Yeah. Oh, way worse ending if they're just watching it on the chalk, slowly blowing on the ball.
100% would have happened to the 2026 Giants. We would have had. Right. Absolutely. Yeah, I just think that, someone can make a lowlight reel of all these moments where guys are, and it's not just, Willie's had his moments, but Barracoto had a couple awful base running moments. We've seen other guys have bad moments, bad decisions. It's just a lack of sharpness that I think costs them in a lot of these games. I don't know how many games you add if this team just plays crisp baseball, but 4 or 5 to this total,
4 or 5, which unfortunately still not enough to move the needle. This is still a full sell team, but at least you feel a little better about them caring.
Yeah. It's just, those are weird. You watch that and you just go what? How?
Yeah.
And is it going to get better? No.
Doesn't feel like it. Year 4 of, hey, we're gonna clean up this sloppiness. We're gonna make these right moves. Like, you can excuse they don't have anyone in the bullpen. Guys are slumping, but this stuff, the fundamental stuff, is fixable hypothetically.
Yeah, and it's those things should be. I think that's one thing you'd want to see, and I think that was part of the disappointment last year in the second half. Was like, okay, this is what it is. They had that horrible series homestand before the deadline, and everyone's gone, and we know that the bullpen's going to be better in the second half. So it is what it is, but at least play a little cleaner baseball. Just hasn't really seemed that way. So that's part of the disappointment of this year for me.
Yeah. Well, they got the big hit on Monday from Adames, did not get what they needed on Tuesday's game. Another 1-run loss with not much showing up from the offense. But you pinpointed a sequence at the end here.
Yeah, there was a sequence. I think it was the 7th inning. I want to go find the box score because I'm watching it, and then I look at it later in the box score and just kind of go, this is a weird one. It was Rodriguez on first. We're in the 7th inning here, top of the 7th. Or no, Jung Hoo Lee on first.
Okay.
Sacrifice bunt, pitching change. Lefty on lefty, Drew Gilbert strikes out swinging, and then Christian Koss pops out to the shortstop. And just was a weird, it's something you and I talked about a lot. Drew's 1 for 29 against lefties.
Yeah.
And I the roster's a little bit limited right now. 2 of their right-handed outfielders, Barracoto, Cox, have oblique strains. Harrison Bader's out as well. So there are some limitations here, but that struck me just as another one where I'd, watch it and go, that whole sequence, I don't understand it was, it is when a guy's 1 for 29, you're giving up an out basically in that situation. So they basically gave up 2 outs after a leadoff single. And I'm not in Kansas City, didn't have a chance to ask Tony about it. But I think that's another thing we've seen a lot of. Like, man, you kind of want some different decision making at times.
It would be so nice to have that just go to clutch bat off the bench that they've relied on over the past few years in Wilmer Flores and Lamont Wade Jr. Just having that guy who you don't even have to tell him in that situation. He's getting his baggy helmet on because this is your job here. We have a bad platoon matchup in Drew Gilbert. We have a runner on 1-run game. Let's do this. They don't really have anyone to fix that archetype. Yeah.
I mean, Flores was a great example. Austin Slater's a great example. Mm-hmm. Wade from the other side. It's something among many things I think they need to figure out in the second half and in the offseason is like, where do some of these guys fit? And can you go get that guy? Like they were a little challenged, and this is part of the challenge of having Bryce and Bevers on the roster. And we've talked a lot about Dom Smith and like how great he was in those situations.
Exactly.
But there are just a lot of these games where you look at it afterwards and just go like, yeah, that sequence, like you just kind of need that guy. And, it's another, I do think they just need to figure out some roster stuff going forward. Cause it's just like a weird, too many times this year, I think we've talked about it being a weirdly balanced roster. Mm-hmm. And like right now you have 3 rookie catchers. To your point, like it'd be great if one of those spots was a guy that in this spot you go, okay, that's like not specifically Austin Slater, but like that's the Slater spot. Like we're going to make you pay for bringing in a lefty. They just haven't had that all year. And I hope they don't, I hope they haven't gone so far to anti-Farhan ball that they've forgotten that there's like real value late in games in being able to swing those matchups. Like a Darren Ruff is another great example. Where you just go, okay, you want to bring in Matt Strom? Well, here is the 6'4", 270-pound slugger who's very good against left-handed pitching.
Yeah. It obviously was a big frustration during that Farhan era, was the lineups being so different, changing, never having a reliable roster, not knowing who's going to be on the team. But you look at situations like that, and especially Drew Gilbert, just as a player, seems built for that.
Yeah, and one of the weird things about this roster is because they've gone so far towards everyday guys and basically having an everyday guy at almost every spot, like they actually could have kind of, when you look back, like they could have carried a Dom Smith or a Wilmer
Mhm.
Forrest type all year because they don't really use their bench anyway. So like they could have had a guy who does that. And going forward, they can get a guy this offseason who's, and a lot of teams around the league have similar guys. So they can go find someone who fits that role, especially if you're going to have guys at every spot for the most part who play every day.
Yeah. Yeah. One more note from this series before we move on to trade talk. Trevor McDonald came out after 4 innings on Monday with an elbow issue. He got an MRI. We haven't heard anything official. Alex, I assume it's unlikely you're about to just drop a bomb on me right here on this podcast, but what do we know?
Well, you hope for the best. And I thought Sergio Romo did a great job on the post game talking about how humid it was and muggy it was, and you have to grip the ball a little bit tighter, and maybe led to just something there. So you hope for the best, but I mean, any time with one of these, you're talking 2-3 weeks minimum. So
yeah,
I would assume Carson Whisenhunt will be back over the weekend. They were trying to find a way to slide him in anyway. He was kind of waiting for Robbie Ray to get traded, and then he'd be back. But I think
moved up.
Yeah, I think this opens it up for Carson to be in the rotation the rest of the year, and hopefully Trevor gets good news and he can be back in August. And I do think there's still some, we still want to know who he is a little bit, right? Like, where does he fit in next year? So you don't want his season to be cut short, even if it's just something where it costs him 6 weeks or whatever, and you reach the end of the year. We'd like to, I think the Giants too need to know more about who he is, but this feels like a pretty easy decision to bring Whisenhunt back this weekend.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned Robbie Ray on the trade block. I think that takes us to our trade deadline deep dive today as Jeff Passan's top 100 candidates list got updated. We didn't dive too deep into the list the first time it came around. I think we were waiting for the post All-Star break or get a little closer to the deadline. So now we can talk Giants list, because the Giants do have quite a few guys on it, including one that there's been a lot of chatter about lately, and that's Jung Hoo Lee. But let's take it from the top in order. The number 10 candidate on the trade list overall, the first Giant, is Luis Arias. We've been basically, since he took off this year and it was made clear what the Giants were doing, and obviously there's not a future at second base, at least as far as we know, for him in San Francisco. He's been our obvious top trade candidate.
I feel almost bad about how often, I mean, you go back to like May where we were taking mailbag questions from people.
Oh, yeah. Fans talking about how his at-bats have become some of the most must-see at-bats since Barry Bonds. And I'm like, my heart hasn't been in it with him because I've been so ready to say goodbye.
See, I'm the opposite. I feel like I'm savoring his at-bats because all these, the mannerisms on these foul tips and the frozen statue you think he does, and some of the, he'll be a statue and then he swings from the heels. So, I've been trying to savor it, but I think they put it at 95% on Luis Arias, and for me that seems low.
It seems low.
Don't know what would have to happen that they would just
a 1 in 20 chance that he doesn't get traded seems very high.
Yeah, but the interesting thing for me, the question, and we've gotten this question a fair amount, is what's a good fit? So you kind of look at who needs second base help. Unfortunately, the 3 teams with a negative F4 at second base this year are the Mets, the Rockies, and the A's,
they're not buying.
They're in the boat with the Giants and the Royals. And Tampa Bay's been thrown about a fair amount. They're 25th in F4 at second base. They've kind of gone a little old school-ish in certain ways this year, so he'd be a great fit there. You probably always want to be careful when you trade with Tampa, but they also have good prospects. So that's a nice spot. Texas has been thrown out a little bit. They've had some issues at second base, and they're right there in the American League West. And then there was a few that were on this ESPN list, and I always like looking at these, one, because it gives us something to talk about here when the Giants are playing the Royals. But two, they have a better sense, I think, of what's going on nationally than we do, certainly. And Boston was mentioned. They've had some issues. Anthony Siegler's playing second base for them, and they've won 15 in a row. So they're, it'd be a great spot for him. I don't know that there's going to be a lot of appetite in Boston for another trade with the Giants this soon.
No, I wouldn't if I were them.
Yeah, that might be a weird one. And then they mentioned 3 teams, the Dodgers, the Yankees, and the Nationals is just positional fits.
Mm-hmm.
I think you can cross the Dodgers off. That feels like one where locally we just go like, they're not trading Luis Arias to the Dodgers.
Yes.
He's like the best thing that's happened to them all year. And I think there's a large segment of the fan base that still does not understand that he has to be traded. So the PR hit of trading him to the Dodgers would be
absolutely brutal.
Yeah.
I will say I pulled up his splits around the league. He doesn't have a huge sample size at some of these ballparks, but he's got over 1,000 OPS at Nationals Park.
There you go. I'm going to cross the Nationals off as well.
Okay.
Because this goes back to when they tried to get CJ Abrams. I don't think these two front offices see eye to eye on value. So I don't know how the Giants and Nationals would come to agreement on. I don't even say I don't think. They do not see anywhere close to eye on value and how to make trades. So I don't see how they would come to an agreement on what Luis Arias is worth.
Well, speaking of what Luis Arias is worth, does the fact that he's such an obvious trade piece, like, you don't want to say he has to be moved, but more or less he has to be moved. Does that decrease his value?
You know, I think what'll I don't want to say decrease because this is not fair to him, but he wants to play second base and he should want to play second base.
Yeah, he's proven.
I think when you see some of the teams that get connected to him, there's probably still some perception externally that, look, this guy's played first, he can DH, he can do all these different things. He's played some left field in the past. So I do think for the Giants, they probably are going to be more targeted in finding a team that will put him at second base. But I still think they'll be able to do it.
Yeah. It's one of those things. Obviously, they'd be looking out for him. They know what he wants. But if you can get more value, go to a team that's not a great fit for him. That's a bummer, but it's a business, right?
Arizona was on one of these. I think they were on this list. And they've had some issues at first base, and that's probably the idea here is he could play some first base, but they have Marte at second base and he wants to play second base. So that would be one where it probably gets a little sticky, but I do think there's such a shortage of true sellers and teams that have impact bats who are on this type of deal where it's very little money the rest of the way. They should be able to do pretty well.
Yeah. All right. Number 18 on the top 100 list, the second Giant is, of course, Jung Hoo Lee. This one, I don't want to say it came out of right field or came out of left field or rather right field. Obviously, there were rumors about this as soon as it was clear the Giants would be sellers. We've done our piece on Giants Talk about how he means so much to this fan base. He's one of the only guys you see the stadium going nuts for. You see his jersey everywhere. He's been super embraced by the San Francisco fans. That being said, he has value, and this is a team looking to build the future by moving valuable assets.
Look, the argument for somebody like Logan Webb is like, you are not in a position currently
to utilize him,
to not just to utilize him, but to be, romantic about any of this. So that would be the same argument with Jung Hoo Lee, that yes, fans love him. Yes, he's very popular. He's, by all accounts, has been a model citizen. He's been good in right field, but you're not in a position not to list him. So I do think Buster's been very firm on Logan. I do think on Jung Hoo Lee, they have to listen more than maybe they would want people to know. I still would be surprised if they find the right deal here that makes them pull the trigger on something like that.
Yeah. And as an outfielder, there's really no, he's shown he can play pretty much across the outfield. There's no shortage of teams that would be a fit for Jung Hoo Lee. It would just be what they can get back for him.
I think the other, we've talked about the option. That does complicate things when you're talking about value, because teams on the other side will say, hey, he can opt out next year. This might be a 1 year, 1.5 year deal. And that makes it a little bit harder to get a trade done.
Yeah. All right. Number 37 out of 100, and the third Giant on the list is Robbie Ray, another one that Giants Talk has been saying goodbye to as long as this season went sideways. So much like Luis Arias, it's not if as much as when, I feel like.
Yeah, he's just an obvious trade candidate. We've gotten this question a fair amount. How do you match up on something like this? What can the Giants expect? I was going back through last year, and the one I found that I really liked was the Diamondbacks fell out of it, and they traded Merrill Kelly to the Rangers. And Merrill Kelly's older, and he was owed significantly less money last year than Robbie is, but the Giants can make that up by picking up some of the contract. And they did what I think is the move here for the Giants, which is they got 3 pitching prospects back. And they're not top 100 guys, but they got 3 guys back. One of them, Mitch Bratt, has made 3 starts for them this year. Cole Drake made his debut for them on Tuesday, pitched very well, 5 shutout innings, I think, something like that. So that is, for me, kind of like the model here for a Robbie Ray trade, which is go and get younger, controllable pitching back. I think there's enough red flags with Robbie, even though the ERA has been very good the last few weeks. He has a 1.2 ERA in his last 6 starts. It doesn't feel like that when you watch him. Like, it's not dominance. I wouldn't necessarily I don't know that you convince someone like Robbie's your number 2 starter in a playoff series. But
yes, this isn't the same. Giants have had some aces, or at very least number 2 guys over the past 5-6 years that they've been looking to move at the deadline and either blocked or didn't do it. This isn't one of those.
Yeah. This isn't Blake Snell. This isn't Carlos Rodon.
Yes.
But I think you can get some good young pitching back, just some guys to throw into the pile and guys who can be part of the solution next year.
Yeah. I like that you have that Merrill Kelly comp, just both three prospects in the top 15 of the system. I would take that for Robbie Ray.
Yeah, I mean, they were 5, 9, and 13 in the Rangers system at the time of the deal. You get something like that back, I think that's totally reasonable.
Yeah. All right. I went out of order here a bit because Jeff Passan actually has number 27, Matt Chapman, listed here. This one's interesting because from all external views, it seems like that no trade clause is not going anywhere.
Yeah, I would be surprised. He's injured right now as well. Could be back this weekend. But the biggest story for the Giants at the deadline is going to be, can they move one of these 3 guys, and do they move one of these 3 guys? I still would be surprised if they're able to do it by August 3rd, but you will continue to see their names thrown out there. And, I think anytime it kind of hangs over everything, right? Like, Willie Adames has been very good offensively in the second half, and you kind of go, what? Does that lead to any phone calls? What's
the value there?
Yeah. So these guys we group together, but we'll see what they're able to do. I would guess these are more of an off-season conversation.
It would be really nice, I'm sure, for the Giants to be able to move one of the 3 big deals. It's cool that they made it this high on the list, but I'm now holding my breath on these.
Yeah.
And then they got one more on here after Adames and Chapman, which were 27 and 68. Almost at the bottom of the list, number 99 out of 100 is Caleb Killian.
I think when the dust settles, we're going to see multiple relievers go from this bullpen. And teams always need relief arms, and the Giants have some guys they need to look at. And, they, even aside from that, you kind of have to look forward as well, because you look at this group and go, how much of this bullpen do you want to turn over in the offseason? I would probably say ultimately half. Going into next year. I think but that means you can't have 6 guys going into next year where you're like, okay, now we took all these guys into the offseason. So I think this would be a time to cash in a little bit if teams are desperate. And they do have guys like Killian's been very good outside of the 9th inning. And even the other night, it's weird chopper, bunt, and he's out there for it. But I think he's been better than the overall numbers show. Brubaker's been pretty effective. Veteran guy. That's a spot on this roster that Tristan Beck can fill, that Spencer Rivens can fill very easily. I would guess they're going to see some interest in Miller, hard throwing lefty, command issues at times, but I think teams that are looking towards the postseason are going to like this stuff. And then the 2 guys I'm really curious about are Foley and Hentges, who have had injury issues, and they're both back, and Hentges has not been very good the last few days, but in general has pitched pretty well for him. Foley's a guy who's had a lot of experience late in games. So those are guys who could be part of the solution next year. But I think it's also, there's part of the question of how many guys do you want to take into the offseason, or do you want to take advantage and trade some guys by August 3rd when teams are going to be desperate for any relief arms?
You already started pulling some names that aren't on this list. So I think I'd love to throw a couple more in. If the team is selling, I think obviously a guy like Elliot Ramos comes up for me. There's plenty of space, plenty of outfielders to fill space, and he's obviously a valuable asset coming back this year. Harrison Bader, we've barely seen him. I'm sure if they can get out from underwater on that one, they'd love to. And I hate to say it, I think he's one of our favorites, but Casey Schmitt has shown so much value this year. And if they're looking to truly get back some assets, I'm sure with his flexibility and able to play anywhere on the diamond, there's 1,000 fits for him across the league.
Yeah, I think the two guys, Ramos and Schmitt are the two guys who would be great if you could have, especially Casey with what he's shown this year. It'd be great if you could have him long term. I don't think you can put him with Bryce Eldridge and in that category of we're not going to discuss it, or especially if you're trying to get, one thing they can do at this deadline is try to get a real good established starting pitcher back, somebody who's you don't have to go and sign a pitcher this offseason. You have a guy who is maybe going into his ARB years or even less than that. So I do think they have to listen on every call they get on some of these guys, and it would suck. And like Casey in particular is very popular in there, but he's also blocked at his best position. So if you don't think you're ever going to be able to trade Matt Chapman, then you have to have those conversations about Casey.
I'm fascinated to see what the second half is going to look like from a fan perspective, because we're already seeing waning interest, discontent from Giants fans for how this first half has gone. And we're talking about potentially making the bullpen worse by moving some of these relief pitchers. We're talking about moving some of the bright spots on the offense and one of the best starting pitchers on the team. Obviously, it makes for a stronger 2027 and beyond, but we still have several months of baseball to play with whatever the dust settles to be at the end of July.
My counter would be they just went 1-5 on a road trip to Seattle and Kansas City. And I personally I'm excited to watch Carson Wisdom every 5 days, see what that looks like.
Let's do it.
I want to see Tidwell back here. Let's get Tugboat up here. Let's see what he has. So, yeah, I think people will move on.
Start building the storylines for next year. Yeah. All right. We have mailbag questions from listeners. We want to preview Giants versus Angels. But first, Giants Talk is presented by Mancini Sleep World. A good mattress can improve your posture, reduce back pain, and even help with allergies. Studies show that getting a great night's sleep improves mood, memory, and productivity. A trip to Mancini Sleep World can set you up for your best rest yet. Stop by or visit sleepworld.com to see what's currently available. All right, before we get into mailbag questions from listeners, how about we do a quick remembering of some guys? We had a listener suggest this. Actually, I want to point out we've had a few listeners suggest this, and that is getting Wilmer Flores back to be that clutch bat off the bench. Listener Will suggested Giants call up Wilmer, who's currently playing in Tijuana with an average above 300 and 10 home runs.
Yeah, that league's very hitter friendly. My first thought was like, okay, thanks everybody. My second thought was to your point about the second half. Like, yeah, I kind of don't hate it if you throw him on there for the last month.
Yeah,
big leagues again.
Just what this team needs is a DH first baseman.
Just last guy on the bench.
Last guy on the bench. I will say, I expect a guy like Wilmer to be, I don't know, hitting like 400 in a Tijuana league. Maybe I just don't appreciate how competitive some of these international leagues are.
I think Gerard homered like twice a game for 3 weeks there.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. Joey Lucchesi signed in Japan with the Chiba Latte Marines.
Yeah, we talked about this around a non-tender time. The Giants technically were correct to bring JT Brubaker back instead of Joey Lucchesi.
Yeah.
So,
and then this is a fun one in Baltimore. Adley Rushman and Basalo are hurt. So we have two Giants, Chadwick Tromp and Sam Huff, representing the orange and black in Baltimore behind the dish.
Former Giants catchers are single-handedly keeping this segment alive, basically.
Remembering some catchers is the new name.
Yeah.
All right. We've got mailbag questions. Our first one today is from Jeffrey. Jeffrey says, I really like Drew Gilbert. Great team guy, funny personality, great defense, but I'm starting to wonder what's the end goal in playing him over guys like Barracoto and Cox for the rest of the year. I feel like we've gotten a long look at Gilbert already, and with the Giants now looking to the future, should they start giving longer looks to the other guys over Gilbert, even at the sacrifice of his stellar defense? Should they start giving Gilbert starts to other players?
You know, there's something interesting about Drew. He's 25 and he's a former first-round pick, so he's actually like, if he had come through the system, he'd be
touted.
I think, yeah, he'd be viewed differently.
Yeah.
This isn't like a 32-year-old who's taking starts from other young guys. He's a young guy as well. So I'll say that. I do think it's a pretty large sample now of him being pretty usable against right-handed pitching. You know, not a leadoff hitter or anything, but like his numbers against righties are fine. He fares fine. He's pretty solid, above average in center field. Has really struggled against lefties, and I think that is the glaring thing that we've seen. We've seen him get a lot of those starts or come into games, or you know, they probably know who he is at this point. But I would like to see. We did kind of see Barracoto get those starts a little bit before he got hurt, and they moved Jung Hoo back to center. But I don't think it's. I wouldn't really knock Drew like starting him too often when they're in this current situation. Like Bader's hurt, Cox is hurt, is their best center fielder. So
yeah,
but
I like him there. Whether it's because of his stats or because of his swagger, like he is a guy who the casual fans are drawn to Drew Gilbert. And I don't mean that as a bad thing. I mean, that's a very good thing. And I think my wife, huge Gilbert fan. So there is value to that, especially when we're not, I'm not saying we're not trying to win games, but like we're talking about trading away guys and just figuring out what's going on the rest of the year.
I do think there's just great energy there too. Like
exactly,
he's a good guy to have in the dugout, good guy to have in your mix. We'll see where it goes from long term, but yeah, I mean he's 25 and he's pretty high pedigree in the past. So
yeah,
there could be more in the tank with him as well.
Yeah. Next question is from Caden. Does it seem like the Giants are going for higher floor guys in the draft and higher ceiling guys in the international market? Has the organization vocalized if this is a trend?
Well, international market lends itself to ceiling. It's you're looking at these guys when they're 13, 14, 15 and trying to figure out who's going to be Francisco Lindor down the line. But I actually think they went pretty high ceiling with a lot of their draft picks this year. Flora seems like the, you know, quote unquote safe number 4, take the best college pitcher, but there's a pretty high ceiling with him. And then they take a couple high school pitchers and then they take a guy who's like a tremendous raw talent in Bonds, but hasn't had the production. So I do think they went pretty high ceiling with a lot of their draft picks this year.
Yeah. And as far as has the organization vocalized if this is a trend, I can't imagine them coming out and calling a draft pick not a high ceiling guy.
Yeah. You know, a lot of times guys with that profile that Keelan has get viewed as like floor guys.
Yeah.
Joe Panik was viewed the same way and was a very productive big leaguer when healthy. So
yeah. All right. Next question from Robert. Just how good is Jackson Flora?
Well, Cole's wearing a Gaucho hat, so
I've got my Gaucho hat on. I realized after we did our draft one that I should have been wearing it.
He would say tremendous. We don't know, right? Like we don't actually know. I'll say the first pitcher taken in the last 5 drafts: Jack Leiter, Kumar Rocker, Paul Skeens, Chase Burns, Tyler Bremner. So Bremner's still in the minors, but the other guys, like you have a couple massive wins in Skeens and Burns, and then Leiter and Rocker where it was rockier.
Yes, so, didn't live up.
So we don't know, but you hope that the Gaucho becomes more like Skeens and Burns.
The story is written. All right, one more about him. Juan asks, if they were in playoff contention this year, would they have considered Flora at all for this year? Most outlets have him as a pretty finished product pitch mix wise. And you can definitely say now that he has some, if not the best stuff in the organization.
That's a great question. In a world where the bullpen is this bullpen, but they still found a way to be in contention, I bet there would be discussions about what if you threw Jackson Flora into that mix.
Yeah.
Just, send him to trip. I don't know. Send him to the minors, have him pitch one inning at a time, see what you have. And can he be, this is going way back, but like David Price back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
In this world, or really in most worlds, he threw a lot in college. And I think the plan is just to let him get his feet wet a little bit and then shut him down and have him healthy next year.
Yeah. Yeah. My big thing was if they were in playoff contention, I don't think they'd need to rush their first round draft pick, right?
Yeah. I guess that's the thin line of like playoff contention, bad bullpen.
Yeah.
Can he be part of that?
Could he have a hero moment? All right. One more from Cube. Cube says, is there any internal talk about Casey Schmitt's viability long-term as a shortstop? Seems like attitude and approach-wise, Arias fits the dream scenario for Posey more than Adames does. I think the front office should do what it can to instill that contact-first system at the big league level and try their best to move Adames and extend Arias.
You say long-term, I think they could probably get away with it for a year. This is a huge pro Casey podcast just in terms of his talent. And
yeah,
I will still say I've watched him play short a fair amount and he's fine, but I don't know that I'd want to make major organizational decisions that put him at third base. He's excellent at shortstop. He's excellent at third. I think he'd be pretty good at second. He can play first. He can play some left, but I don't know that he's just not like truly a big league shortstop long term. He could do it for a while if he needed it, but
yeah. All right, there's our mailbag questions for the day. If you have a question for us to answer on Giants Talk, go ahead and send it to wherever you can find Alex or myself on social media. We're on one or the other of us is on X, Blue Sky, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube comments. So get your questions out there. We'll find them. We'll put them in our collection and answer them on a relevant day. Before we wrap things up, let's take a look at Giants versus Angels as another bottom-dwelling Major League Baseball team is coming to face off with our equally bottom-dwelling San Francisco Giants. Who do we have starting these games on the mound?
It is Grayson Rodriguez versus Logan Webb on Friday. Saturday is a young man named Ryan Johnson versus Robbie Ray. And then Sunday is Jose Soriano, who's been one of their best, versus TBA, but TBA is most likely Carson Wisenhunt.
Okay, great.
I have that. Old friends, are you coming to see Wade Meckler?
You know I'm coming to see Wade Meckler. You know it. You know what? I wish I had grown my mustache out. I just shaved it the other day, but that would have been a great Meckler tribute, that ratty blonde mustache.
We have like 2 minutes left in the pod, but this is one of those, if you want to pause the podcast and go find the clip of him catching the first pitch from a 7'9" basketball player.
It's so funny.
Does not disappoint. So,
and good for him for being the guy to go out there and do it. Just embrace, I'm the little guy on the team.
Tremendous all around. It's one of those, it's like a optical illusion where all of a sudden they come together and
it looks like it's AI, honestly. When they, after the pitch, when they stand next to each other, it looks like it's AI.
Tyler Heineman.
Love him.
Love him. Friend of the pod, did magic on this pod during
one of our finest episodes.
And then Jorge Soler. He's there as well. So
great. And then for those coming out to the ballpark on this beautiful San Francisco weekend, Saturday is Vintage Button-Up Day for giveaways, and Sunday is the Matt Chapman shirt. I think the Vintage Button-Up looks pretty cool. I'm going to snag one of those.
I haven't seen it, but it sounds like a good idea.
Yeah.
And I do want to mention their coaching staff for guys of our age is a real remembering some guys, because their manager is Kurt Suzuki. Their coaches, among them, Brady Anderson, John Mabry, Mike Maddox, Adam Eaton, and Max Stassi.
Wow.
So some real guys that we've seen over the years.
Just like, is this like the guys who are just now old enough that they're not coaching their kids' high school team anymore? And they're like, I can get back out there.
Yeah, it truly a hilarious coaching staff too, because everyone's going in a different direction.
Mm-hmm.
Hiring these guys who are like A-ball hitting experts.
Yeah.
And the managers are like, you played in the big leagues?
Great.
What would you like to do?
You've got a job. You have a Baseball Reference page. You're hired.
Funny organization.
Funny organization. All right. Well, we just faced off against a funny organization. It didn't go too great. So we'll see what the Giants can do against the Angels, a team with some long-standing history. Almost a quarter of a century ago at this point. Yeah, we'll be back to break that down here on Giants Talk.
I was going to say this was a great week for the broadcast because at least, the baseball isn't great, but a lot of flashbacks during the Royals series, and they can do the same for the next 3 days.
Exactly.